They didn't just lose a game, they survived a script. Phantom fouls, swallowed whistles, and one final call that ripped Aaliyah Boston off the floor with 26 seconds left. If you thought this was basketball, watch again. This was a heist, and after it ended, Lexie Hull finally said what everyone was thinking. Game 5 should have been a coronation for the most resilient underdog in the league. Instead, it became a case study in how momentum can be strangled by a whistle. From the opening tip, the Fever's rhythm was chopped up by stoppages that always seemed to tilt one direction. Kelsey Mitchell cooked until her body literally shut down. Odyssey Sims morphed into the heartbeat of the series. Boston fought a war in the paint, and still got ejected by the scoreboard's cruelest number 6. Yet even as bodies fell and calls piled up, Indiana forced overtime. Not because they were favored, but because they refused to accept the script they were being handed. Then, in the quiet after the storm, Lexie Hull broke her silence and turned a loss into a message. From the first quarter, the pattern felt familiar. Every Fever surge met by a whistle that froze the air. A clean block became a personal. A routine box out became a foul. What should have been runs spiraled into free throws the other way. And the rhythm of a playoff classic got chopped into fragments. By the time the fourth quarter arrived, the question wasn't can Indiana win, but will they be allowed to? And yet, with all of that, they clawed the game into overtime. That's not luck. That's a team playing 5 on 8 and still believing. Aaliyah Boston spent the night doing heavy-duty labor in the trenches and getting penalized for the effort. A feather-touch moving screen. A sold flop rewarded as offensive contact. Then the climax. A late rebound with Jackie Young. 2 players simply fighting for position, and the whistle that ended Boston's night. It wasn't just the 6th foul. It was the implication that dominance in the paint would be treated as a crime. Removing the Fever's anchor with 26 seconds left didn't just swing a possession. It reshaped the outcome. Mitchell was a flamethrower until the cumulative hits extinguished the flame. 3 for 3 from deep, carving gaps, punishing switches, all while absorbing bumps, grabs, and hip checks that rarely drew whistles. When she crumpled with cramps and had to be helped off, it felt less like an isolated injury, and more like the natural conclusion to a night of uncalled contact. The box score will say 15 points in limited minutes. The film will say a star played through a storm with no shelter. Signed late, thrust into chaos. Sims played like she'd been waiting her entire career for this exact fight. 27 points born from sheer defiance. Floaters, pull-ups, fearless drives into bodies that somehow never produced free throws. Her layup that forced overtime told the whole story. If the game wouldn't give the Fever oxygen, Sims would steal it. In a night defined by external control, her game was the one thing the whistle couldn't cage. Game 5 didn't exist in a vacuum. Across the series, the same beats repeated. Touch fouls on Boston, swallowed whistles on Mitchell and Hull. Free throw gaps that stretched belief. By Game 3, the coincidence defense had expired. Coaches were forced to design game plans around officiating volatility. A screen is legal on one trip, illegal on the next. Competitive integrity doesn't survive that kind of roulette. Neither does fan trust. Moments piled up that would tilt any team. A violent shove on Lexie Hull somehow downgraded to common. A slap across Natasha Howard's face ignored as play continued. Sims clipped in overtime yet treated like the initiator. The message to Indiana was consistent. Survive greater force with less protection. The message to Vegas was simpler. Attack and the benefit of the doubt is yours. You don't need advanced analytics. Just count the walks to the stripe. 25 fouls on Indiana. The Aces practically lived at the line. A'ja Wilson alone made 10 trips. Boston, while living in bumper car traffic under the rim, took only 2. Numbers like that don't merely suggest a lean. They cement a theme. And when those numbers materialize in an elimination game, they don't just skew momentum, they rewrite outcomes. Playing through a back issue that would sideline most players, Hull gave Indiana elasticity. 12 points, 7 boards, 3 assists, deflections everywhere, and the kind of rotations that don't show up on highlight reels, but save possessions. After the buzzer, her words cut through the noise. Yes, the loss hurts. Yes, losing Boston and Mitchell in crunch time was brutal. But pride remained, pride in the fight and sending it to overtime in a group that refused to fracture. It wasn't excuse-making, it was a standard being set. Every comeback needs a stabilizer. And Petty supplied it. Timely threes that punctured Ace's runs. Spacing that gave Sims lanes and composure that kept Indiana from spiraling when whistles stacked. 12 or 13 points don't trend on social. But in a game where energy was constantly siphoned, her shots were generators. Howard's stat line will read solid. The tape will scream invaluable. She toggled between banging with size and switching onto guards, rebounded through hits and played through contact that rarely garnered respect. Her ability to manufacture extra possessions, taps, scrapes, second chances, was the scaffolding for every Fever run. When the whistle didn't protect her, she protected the glass anyway. Stephanie White wasn't just drawing up plays. She was triaging variables. Who can defend without being tagged? Which actions will draw the fewest offensive fouls? How do you manage Boston's minutes through whistle landmines? Coaching is hard. Coaching with moving officiating goalposts is nearly impossible. And yet, Indiana reached overtime in a road elimination game. Proof of a staff that kept clarity when the ground kept shifting. Bad calls don't just cost points, they tax belief. Every phantom foul erodes trust. Every swallowed whistle breeds hesitation. And hesitation is death in playoff basketball. The Fever's refusal to crack mentally, to keep cutting, keep rotating, keep contesting, is the most underrated feat of the night. Plenty of teams break under that weight. Indiana got stronger. Removing Boston with 26 seconds left didn't only delete a rebounder, it erased gravity. Her presence bends spacing, dictates matchups, and anchors the late-game defensive shell. Without her, Vegas could attack the rim without the same fear and jam the paint on the other end. One whistle changed shot quality, coverage priorities, and Indiana's crunch time identity all at once. If you had to bottle the 2025 Fever into one montage, it would look like this game. Stars sidelined, role players elevated, whistles against them, yet every huddle echoing the same belief. We're still here. Sims as the pulse, Hull as the conscience, Howard as the engine, Petty as the spacer, and Boston and Mitchell as the soul. The outcome hurt, the identity hard. This wasn't a plucky sixth seed getting hot. This was a foundation test-driven in fire. Caitlin Clark returns healthy. The spacing flips instantly. The pick-and-roll food chain changes, and everyone's load lightens. Boston, having survived whistle warfare, comes back sharper. Mitchell reclaims her closer reps. Hull's voice grows. Add vets like Sophie Cunningham and a bench that proved playoff-ready. And you don't just get a good team, you get a problem the league has to solve every spring. Game 5 was a robbery, but it also became a reveal. It revealed a Fever core that doesn't fracture under pressure. A locker room that trades excuses for pride, and a city that rallied behind a team playing uphill. Lexie Hull broke her silence to say what mattered. They fought together to the last possession. And that's why this doesn't end as a grievance. It begins as a warning. Next time, with a healthy roster and the same spine, whistles won't be enough. If you're riding with the Fever, drop "We're still here" in the comments. Smash like, sub for full playoff breakdowns, and hit the bell so you don't miss the off-season moves that change everything. And tell me which moment convinced you the whistle swung this game.